Okay, we're live. We'll just wait a couple of seconds for people to join, and then we'll just take it from there. There we go. We've already got our viewers, so we may as well start just for their entertainment. Hi, you joining Citizens Advice today on Saturday, and we're just having a live stream with 5 of our fantastic volunteers. We're live at the moment on Facebook and Twitter. But a lot of you will be watching this back afterwards, either on our website or on our social media. So hopefully that will still be useful for you. I'm Jake Morrison. I'm the Chief Executive here at Citizens Advice Wokingham. And it's Volunteers Week this week. So we thought it was no better time than to introduce 5 of our volunteers. We've got different people, different backgrounds, and different roles, and they'll all introduce themselves in a moment. And we're happy to take any of your questions as well. So if you have any questions, please just reply to us or comment. And a few of us should now see that we've got a comment there on the side. And we'll bring any of them up from any questions that you have to any of the people on our panel. So I'm going to start with, as I said to you all before, people on my right. So Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm currently working as a trainee assessor at Citizens Advice twice a week. I was doing that. And since the coronavirus stopped the training around 2/3 of the way through, I've been doing triage work on Advice Line from home.
Brilliant. Caroline?
Hello, I'm Caroline Guy, and I was previously working as the office receptionist prior to the lockdown, but now, since we're not in the office, we're working from home, and I'm now working as an initial checker.
Bernadette?
Hello, I'm Bernadette, and I first saw Citizens Advice as an opportunity for volunteering at a volunteer fair that was held in Wokingham Town Hall, and it looked like it offered opportunities with basically having a lot of variation in the types of problems they've got, and makes you basically keep on top of things when you retire. So at the moment, I'm a trainee assessor. I did my training in January, and then just finished it just nearly finished it, not quite finished it, but just before we went into shutdown. So that's hence the reason I'm still a trainee.
Brilliant, thank you. Roz?
Hi, I'm Roz, and I'm an assessor. I started last March, did the training last March with Caroline, and so an assessor, but I'm also starting to learn about employment to join the specialist employment advisor team.
Brilliant. And Sophie?
Hello, I'm Sophie. I've been here with Citizens Advice for over 8 years now. I started as an assessor. I then trained as an advisor, which is what I do now. I also trained to be an advice session supervisor, which I have done from time to time to cover people if they're on courses, etc. And I've recently been asked and have agreed to take over a lead advisor role in benefits. I've really enjoyed my time here and still enjoy it, but that we'll come to that later.
We hope so. So we've got a whole variety of people here, so please do submit any of your questions around volunteering. If you're interested in volunteering or just curious about what our volunteers do or the work that we do, please do just ask them, and I'm sure one of you will happily, hopefully, answer. So Sophie, you are our longest serving volunteer in terms of this panel that we have right now. So why have you stayed for 8 years?
Well, when I'm not planning on going anywhere, by the way, I'm still staying on. When I retired after a long and really satisfying and challenging career in education, I wanted to do something that was perhaps out of the education field directly, but still very challenging. And I have always volunteered, really, but when I retired, I volunteered with the Prince's Trust for a little while. I have volunteered with Rape Crisis, but I wanted something that was going to be regular and, to help me to learn a lot of new things. And that's exactly what it's been. It's challenging. You learn something new all the time. There's a lot of information, but you don't need to know it all. Certainly hones your research skills because you have to know where to find things. And of course, you are helping a whole range of people and, supporting the community and supporting people from all walks of life, to empower them and to help them to go from feeling hopeless to hopeful, hopefully.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. And Roz, what brought you to Citizens Advice Wokingham?
I suppose really in my day job, before I finished doing it, I was doing payroll, and I spent a lot of time trying to talk to people and saying, oh, that's a not very good tax code, and do this, ring them up, get a better, and all this sort of thing. And I kind of was drawn to sort of helping people, and I just passionately feel people should have somewhere to go, so they never feel that they've got no help with any problems they have. We can't all know everything. The world's complicated, and I want them to have somewhere to go to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, hopefully you chose the right place for this one. Bernadette?
Hello. Well, I'm with Citizens Advice, as I said, because that identified it really as being a volunteer organisation that actually is quite challenging and has a lot of variation in the kind of problems you have to deal with. And like some of the other people on this panel, I worked quite a different field. I used to be a quality manager for a pharmaceutical company. And one of the reasons I chose it was because it was very different from what I was doing. And actually, I wanted to do something different from what I was doing. So that was a nice thing, a nice change. And it's certainly nice to be helping people. And you do get to find out and help people that have some quite profound problems at times. And, it's nice to be able to help people a bit when they've got such far more problems than you've got. I have joined other volunteer organisations as well. This is the one that probably, I suppose, is the more intellectually stimulating than the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just going to bring up a comment here from Christine, who's the former manager of Wokingham United, not Wokingham United Charities, Wokingham Volunteer Centre. I've got too many charities in my head at the moment. And she's saying, great to hear from Bernadette that the volunteer fairs produce results. So tell us about then how you did find out about us. I know you've said the volunteer fair, but did you have a conversation with someone that was there? Or
I did, but I can't remember who that was. It was back in September last year. I knew I was going to be retiring / make redundant at the end of November. So I was getting ready. I know what I'm like, and I know I can't change from working, full time to not doing anything. So I was looking in advance, and I kind of identified two organisations, which was the Red Cross and Citizens Advice, as volunteer groups that I wanted to join. I always thought actually that everyone was paid in Citizens Advice, to be honest. And I thought that I didn't realise that there was a lot of the resources through volunteers, and that was new to me. But it's nice to be able to help people. So
yeah, because we have 5 full-time equivalent staff and 87 volunteers. So, we absolutely are hugely dependent upon our volunteers for the services we provide in our communities, which is partly why we wanted to highlight this in Volunteers Week. But because you've said September, it does remind me, and I do try to throw this into conversations every so often, but it was the day after the Princess Anne visit. So it was Nikki and Claire that were the... and I think John, one of our volunteers, was also there as well, and a couple of others popped along. But obviously, everyone was completely knackered because we'd had a day of the visit and then our AGM afterwards. And the fair was on the Saturday, and Christine and Helena from the Volunteer Centre had come to the visit as well. So very good timing to have been introduced to the service, because hopefully everyone was on very good footing at that point. Did anyone else join through the volunteer fair, or how did you get involved in signing up to us?
I got involved through the Wokingham Volunteer Centre because I was doing voluntary driving, and I still sort of am with them. So through Christine there. Yeah.
Cool.
I found out about Citizens Advice through word of mouth. My granddad had done it in Woodley probably finished in the 90s, so a very long time ago. And then my brother did it 4 or 5 years ago. So I found out and went on the website and then applied via email, or asked via email, to do a taster day, I think that's what it's called, and did a taster day with Nikki, and then emailed my interest to go forwards with the training, and then started the training from there.
Brilliant. Caroline, you were going to come in as well?
Yeah. For me, after I'd retired, I was quite keen to get involved in some work in the community, voluntary work in the community. And I was just sort of considering my options, and I was on an online forum, a local group, and I saw Citizens Advice advertising there for volunteers. And to be honest, I didn't really know much about Citizens Advice either. So I filled out a very simple form online, and then I was called a few days later by Nikki, who invited me to come to an open day. And I was amazed at the work that Citizens Advice does, and just thought it was brilliant. So it's something I'd like to get involved in, and that's how I got started.
Well, I think when I was looking through Twitter, I'm sure there's still a picture of you observing someone, and I can't remember, was it Gail that you observed, or did Gail observe
Margaret.
you? Margaret. You observed
Yes.
Margaret, and then Gail must have observed you at some point.
Yes, she did. Yes.
Yeah. So it's just interesting, isn't it, how that all goes around. But I say that on purpose, because obviously, so then Caroline, with you, once you'd had the open day, what was the next step from that? So obviously you will have applied and you'll have gone through that process.
That's right. And then I did some shadowing. So I decided to go down the route of the admin, and I quite fancied the reception role because I quite like face-to-face contact. And so I then did two or three sessions of shadowing with Margaret, and she showed me the ropes and was absolutely brilliant. And I did a bit more training, I think, with Nikki, a couple of more training sessions, GDPR and that kind of thing. And then I was let loose.
And you were brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you, Sophie. Yes, I really enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot myself as well since I've been there.
Yeah.
And then, actually, since I've been there, I've moved offices now. I'm working in the Woodley office, and I found that, I didn't even realise that there was an office in Woodley, and I've lived in Woodley many years. And so that was a revelation. And then I thought that would be much easier for me. And the staff were brilliant and very supportive. And then when an opportunity came up, I moved over to Woodley, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's fair. And now you're working from your home, but we'll get on to that.
Now I'm working from home.
Yeah, you keep changing your mind on where you're working from, but we'll
yes. Yeah.
No, so I think let's talk to then Dan, Bernadette, and Roz about your experiences then, because Roz, you've now been here, I think you were saying before, over a year.
Just over a year, yeah.
And you joined in the same section as Caroline. So what did that? So obviously you and Caroline went down different routes. So how come you joined at the same time? Where did that take you both then?
Well, the training course, we were all on that together, weren't we? I think.
Yes. The first induction day.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that's and then went down the assessor route. So I just fancied that that was what I'd kind of decided I'd like to do. So I've been learning that and how to ask all the right questions to get the right way forward. Really.
Remember how long your training was then? Because obviously, if yours went on longer than Caroline's,
it was 4 weeks, 4 days. Each Tuesday for 4 weeks, so a month. And then, of course, you never stop learning. When you actually get let loose, you observe a trained assessor. You sit in with them. If the client's happy with that, they don't have to say yes. Or you listen in on advice line again if they're happy with that. And then when you're ready, you do one with them, with yourself being watched, which is kind of good backup. And so, and then you do, some more and etc. Keep practicing, and then you get signed off. So when you're ready, Nikki will come and sit in with one of yours and check that you're doing everything as you should and sign you off, sort of thing.
Yeah, and you're still here, so clearly you did.
I'm still here.
Yes,
yeah, that's right. No, so it's been good. You know, you're always learning, like Sophie said. You know, you're always learning. But it's good to be. I enjoy talking to people, and it is good to be able to try and help.
Yeah. Jane has commented that she's waiting to be accepted onto the next training, having completed application forms, which is great. It's good to see. So, see, Nikki will be following up on that, which is fantastic, and we look forward to welcoming you to the charity. I want to just talk through the roles then. So, what do the roles mean before we move on to obviously coronavirus and how we've had to change the roles that we all do and the service that we provide? So, let's talk about the assessor role. So does someone want to tell me what the assessor does and what it means to clients, and then the role that you fulfill within that? Roz?
Well, I don't mind. I just don't want to I don't want to speak all the time. So. I am, yes, Bernadette. Yeah, so really, you're the first point of contact, either on the telephone or face-to-face when we were doing that. And maybe email, but basically, yeah. So you try and ask all the right questions to assess the extent of the problem, and you do kind of, you know, go outside the initial problem that they might have rung you with to try and see if there's anything else, you know. So if there's, you know, a benefits type question, you do kind of get a little bit involved in, you know, any debts or anything like that we can, you know, you might need help with, and try and sort of explore the whole thing so that we can get a good picture, but also so we can do, you know, go forward without missing anything or whatever. And of course, it is entirely down to the client how they want to use us or, you know, guide us, but that doesn't mean we don't try and ask or, you know, so yeah, so I guess that's it, you know, and how much help they want. Sometimes people only want to know their rights or a website or something, and sometimes they need, you know, an appointment with someone more specialised, like Sophie, who can really get, you know, to the nitty gritty of and make sure everything's covered.
And on that note, nice move into Sophie then. So someone's had an assessment. Why would they then come to you as an advisor?
Well, because the assessment is the first stage and you've gathered the information, and then you need to go into it in more detail. So you spend a longer time with them for a start. You might be looking at all their documentation. You might want to go into how, you know, the context for how they are in that situation, why they're in the situation. But very importantly, you look at actually what they want to achieve, because in the end, we don't tell people what to do. We are either exploring options with them, and we say, well, you could do this, that, or the other. These are the options. Or we just guide them and try and empower them. And we will kind of respond to what they need. But it is a much more detailed look. So benefits is a hugely complex area. But very often, no one inquiry area stands on its own. So if someone comes to you with a problem to do with debt, it could be because they've lost their job. It could be because a relationship's broken down. It could be because of redundancy. So it's sort of multifactored, and then you have to decide what the priority is and how you work through it. And it might take one appointment, it might take 3, and that's what you have to decide on. But of course, after all that, you then have to write it up. It's all confidential within the bureau, so that whoever takes them on, ideally you might take them on so you know what the situation is. But, you know, so there's a smooth process through every issue. And all the time we have to respect the client and where they are, because very often people are really embarrassed about having to come and ask for help. And it's up to us to reassure them that it's absolutely fine, because at any point, any of us can have a problem which we need to get help with. So it's not anything to be embarrassed about, but we need to help them through it, and they're really glad for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. And then Caroline, although we're not recruiting for the role at the moment, obviously you're one of, I think we have over 10 admin volunteers. So tell us about that. What do you do in the organisation?
Right. So my role as a receptionist Roz thinks she's the first point of contact, but she isn't. I am.
No, true.
But that's why I went
Fair
there,
enough.
on the phone, obviously they are. So on
Yes.
the phone, then they go straight through to an assessor. But absolutely face to face, you're then the first.
Teasing, Roz.
No, fair point.
So the client comes in, obviously, and I'm the first point of contact.
Unless Roz gets in there first.
Unless Roz gets in, yeah. So then I ask them, have they been to us? Do they live and work in the borough? And if they do, then we're able to help them. And then, obviously, sometimes they can be quite anxious when they come in, or, you know, like Sophie said, embarrassed or whatever. So I try to give them a warm welcome and make them feel more relaxed. And then we just get down to registering them. So I'll give them a form to complete, and then I register them online. Or if they've been to us before, then just a slightly different procedure. And then I'll pass the details over to either an assessor or an advisor, and just make the client feel welcome and comfortable, and wait for their appointment time to come up.
And that is a key role, because I know Sophie was agreeing with that then as well. But certainly, you know, my office in Waterford House is behind the reception desk, isn't it? So plenty of times I've heard you or one of our other receptionists sitting with somebody who is overwhelmed by the form and the process and all that type of stuff, where you've just talked them through it, which is a really key, important role. But I also think which we'll come on to, I said, in the coronavirus, but is a key introduction to the service, isn't it, for a volunteer?
Yes.
So if you're not sure necessarily what the right route is for you, it's a nice role to get involved.
That's right, it is. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's lovely. Yes.
Brilliant.
I think the main thing is to stay calm as well, because you can get a little bit overwhelmed at times if you've got lots of clients all coming together, and it takes a little while to fill out the forms and get them registered. So just try and stay calm and relaxed, and then they feel, I think it rubs off onto the clients. So
definitely. And that's why, you know, in our Waterford House office, we've got those positive quotes from clients that talk about how they felt once one of the volunteers have spoke to them and supported them with their issue, because it is all about supporting people, isn't it, to make sure that, as Sophie says, if they are anxious or whatever about accessing the service, that we make that as easy and simple as possible for them to experience. Let's then move on to now. So the coronavirus situation, because obviously anyone who's going to join us as a volunteer now is entering a whole different charity, really, aren't they, in terms of the way we're delivering our services. And arguably, we've got a different layer now, which all of you are involved with. So just to quickly introduce, we deliver the one front door for the Wokingham Borough in terms of the community crisis response. We're working with the Borough Council and lots of other brilliant charities to link them up with things like prescriptions, food deliveries. Sophie's created a supermarket and prescriptions list that is very popular around what's accessible and available right now, and has been over the last couple of weeks. So we deliver this new triage service, which is open Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you can get those details on our website, which I have got the screen now. So does someone want to tell me, Dan, do you want to tell me about One Front Door then, in terms of the triage role? What's that mean for the volunteer, and what does that mean for the client?
Well, I believe that it involves the kind of sectioning off of the different elements when someone rings you. So you have the kind of One Front Door policy, whereby if it's something that someone like me who's doing triage, who's not necessarily completely, hasn't completed the full training in terms of observing other assessors, and then in turn being observed, it enables you to do some things like prescription collection or food deliveries. And that works through kind of other, not sister agencies, I don't know, other bodies that you would kind of send a prescription off to, like the volunteer service or the food distribution hub. And then on the other side, I think there's still the kind of core citizens advice work, which I suppose even triaging you slightly overlap with, where you're collecting details of the client's case and putting it forwards towards a assessment callback from someone who is trained, an assessor or an advisor, to complete that.
And Bernadette, you were taking some of our calls originally, weren't you, straight from the start, because you were in the office as someone who was testing for me, certainly when we were trying to figure some stuff out before we moved in. So again, what does One Front Door, what does the triage structure look like for you? as a volunteer?
Well, yeah, it's in a way. I mean, as Dan said, you get the calls coming in, and triage obviously means that you prioritise them. So that's the idea. It's an initial layer, it's an initial filter for people's problems. So you take a look at the problem, and if it's something simple like they need food shopping or a prescription collected, then you can deal with that, and you can sort it out there and then, and refer them to the right charity. So the idea of the front door is we take the call and it goes directed to other charities if that's what's required, and that is what has been happening with things like food and prescriptions, where we've had local charities that have been able to go and collect those items and and take them to the clients. But additionally, there obviously are more profound problems where people have got problems with debt, or they've been furloughed, or they're unemployed, or there was a guy that actually wanted to get a will sorted out, so we helped with that. So we do look at sort of other problems as well, and they get referred to an assessor to deal with them. I do apologise for my voice. It doesn't usually happen.
It's all right. Let me turn you off while you go and get a drink. I'll come back to you in
Yeah.
Caroline,
Yes.
just before we move on to Dan's point about the core service, then you're someone who's you were off for a couple of weeks at the start of coronavirus. You've then sort of rejoined us. So you've then trained as a triager. How was that training, and then what sort of support have you felt as someone new to the One Front Door system?
Right. So as you say, I got into lockdown with my parents up in the northeast for 6 weeks, I think it was. So then I came back and got in touch with the service again, and everyone was already set up from home working, and so I just wanted to know if there was any way I could help. So I just got in touch again, and Nikki contacted me and said, how do you fancy trying a triage role? Which I was a little bit apprehensive about, because I hadn't done anything like that before, because obviously my work had been face-to-face rather than on the telephone. But I agreed to do the training, which I did, and I had a couple of online training sessions with Nikki and some other colleagues, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I went from there, really, and then I completed my training, and I took my first call this week on Wednesday. So I was quite pleased with that. But I think I was anxious because, like, when you're in the office, if you need to ask somebody or you've got a problem, you can nip next door and ask and find out the answer, whereas you're working remotely at home and it's not that easy. But having said that, it was actually, because the support was brilliant. The supervisor, who we can contact at any time, is there available. Excuse me. And he was wonderful. He was patient, calm, and guided me through, and was great. So I'm coming back next week. So obviously it wasn't so bad.
We hope so. So Roz, you then as a trained assessor, as Dan said, some of the cases, I think it's 40% of our One Front Door cases now. So we've helped 2,015 people in the last 11 weeks. 40% of them have then needed some form of advice, which our assessors will help with. So what is that next step now during the coronavirus pandemic? So Dan refers someone over to you in the core service. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, then we bring them up to try to get more information and see whether, at this point we can explore it and help straight away, or whether they need a further appointment with an advisor if it is, too specialised for our knowledge, really. So quite a lot of the time we can help straight away. But at the moment, I have to say, it's excellent. You can get an advisor appointment within a week, which is lovely. So, it's really very quick and efficient at the moment. I think possibly because a lot of us I used to just do a Tuesday, but now I'm doing another couple of afternoons or whatever. And then I'm doing a bit behind the scenes with my employment learning. So I've taken on a case there and everything. So I check, and if documents come in, I do a little bit more work. So I think maybe that we're all doing a little bit more because we don't have to travel into the office, so we could just log on for a couple of hours. And I think it's actually, the volume of work is there, but actually it's proving very quick and efficient and a good system.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And then if, as you say, if it's something that does need more specialist work, then that goes over to Sophie and a couple of other people who are advisors. So then what are you doing now at home with the clients that need our support?
Is that me?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, then I have to say that if an assessor has done a good job, and of course that's what happens, it is really, really helpful at advice stage because you've got a basis. And Roz is absolutely right. So even though you commit for a particular day, I now am able to spend an afternoon before the appointment day actually researching that case. And you do have to do a lot of groundwork before you actually see the client, and sometimes, of course, the appointment goes in a different direction, but you explore the details with them, you look at exactly what the issue is, you've done some research before, you can talk about the options. You might well also, in the process of talking with them, because you've won their trust, realize that there are other issues that are related that haven't come out before. So it might be that you have a longer relationship with them. And the follow-up is also really important. Not only do you have to write the case, but you will often send them what we call a next action sheet. So we say, well, this is what we've talked about. This is what you could do now. This is what we will do. And then maybe if they've got another appointment, how to prepare for that appointment as well, so that the time is well used. Because all the time you're trying to reassure them that, you're on the case, you want to help them, and that it needn't be just ended in one appointment. It could go on later. I just want to add also that I remember when I joined that there was many years ago, there's this preconception that Citizens Advice only sees those people who feel marginalized or who are really struggling with money. And actually, the word citizens is really important. It is for every citizen. And it can be someone who apparently has everything going for them, but there could be a problem that they need support with. So it's for everybody, absolutely everybody.
Absolutely. There's definitely no wrong reason to contact us. Thank you.
No.
So I'm going to just bring up Nikki's comment here. So Nikki's asked you all a question of what is your most memorable moment, as well as I'm sure you're fully aware, we're all very grateful, as always, for everything that you do. What is your most memorable moment, Dan? Your very short moment with us.
That's hard.
Nice.
And that can be a case. So, what's the most memorable case? What's the most memorable outcome? However you want to take it.
I can't. It's very hard to pick out a single one, because even though I've only been doing it about 2 months, but you can answer them maybe, I don't know, 8 or so, 10 or so calls in a day, and then you end up and they, what was my most memorable moment? I really don't. Well, I think maybe because it's recent, but I had a call this Friday, so yesterday, from a lady who needed help, and it's probably memorable because it seems quite simple. It's the prescription collection, which is the most sort of routine one. And then I sort of had done everything, and there was a couple tasks that needed to be raised because she wasn't able to actually contact she didn't have a computer, and she would have had to have contacted the doctor's surgery electronically, so she couldn't even request the medication. But it was that after I'd spoken to her and sort of said I was going to raise the tasks, then she just wanted to have a conversation because she's nearly 80. She lives by herself, and kind of maybe beyond family members who can't be sort of perpetually within reach or access. She doesn't necessarily have, or people don't necessarily have that many new voices to hear and to engage with. So I think that was the most memorable. I also do remember being asked to request a police escort for someone, which was stand up just because I wasn't really sure what to do with that one. But but there are. I do remember quite a lot of them. Also, of course, you also remember the ones which are, where there's you can't necessarily get a good resolution, and you're thinking about it afterwards, hoping that they have found some sort of resolution. Especially because I can't help them at all. So I spoke to one man for 45 minutes who'd had, been attacked, had lots of different things, and I can't actually help him beyond booking him in. So you remember those as well, and you keep an eye to see if your messages say that there's been the task has been dealt with and they've had help and a callback.
Yeah, which I was just going to expand on, because that's true, isn't it? So on our case management system, we would always then follow that up. It just then might not be you, it might be dealt with by someone else, but certainly that's the beauty, I would say, of having a larger team of around 90 people. Caroline, what's your most memorable moment?
Well, mine is more of a team thing, because my most memorable moment was when we had Princess Anne visit the office. It was such a lovely day. All the team was there. It was a very happy day, and it was lovely, and that was very memorable for me.
Yeah,
we got
absolutely
introduced personally, and that was very nice.
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah, do you remember, Bernadette?
Well, I've got two in a way. A memorable moment in terms of the experience when I first started interviewing people face to face, and that is maybe the clients. So when I just finished observing other assessors, then I had to lead an interview myself, and we do that 3 times. And it was I think the relief when I'd finished it, because I was a bit apprehensive about, and scared about what that would be like. And I think as long as you're engaging the clients and you're bringing the information out from them and they trust you, really initially you're gathering that information, and then you can pull out of the interview and just say, do you mind waiting for a bit, pull away and have a conversation with your supervisor as to the best course of action. And as you get more experience, you can do the research yourself, and then you just pass that by your supervisor. But initially, you're probably not going to know, and you're not expected to know all the technical information, especially not to begin with. As I said, as time goes by, you begin to pick it up. But and even now, there is the supervisory experience is through Hangout, so it's still there, but obviously it's remote. So that's kind of it's that relief. Oh, phew, it's gone okay, because I thought it might not. So that's that experience. But the other one, I think, really with clients, I think more generally, it's those that really are self-shielding. And I can't imagine, being a very active person, what that must be like. And it must be absolutely horrendous, because they were told to stay at home for 12 weeks, and then they've got to stay. That's been extended. And you just don't know when things are going to be safe. And that experience must be awful. So, whatever little things we can do to help, which probably in the great scheme of things is not much, but at least, as they say, every little helps.
Absolutely.
And then there's the weird and wonderful problems clients have presented that are just that you remember because they're not about coronavirus. Yeah. For example, there was a lady that called about misleading website for ladies' underwear, or a duplicated trade name, and they're kind of quite interesting, because I think, well, I've heard of that one before. Let's go and have a look. So, anyway, it's a bit of a multitude of things there, Jake.
No, it's good. But something you said then did make me laugh, because as we move on to Roz, it might be your most memorable moment in a bad way, but obviously Bernadette had said, which I agree with, that your job initially is just to get information, it's to get the facts. But you'll remember the day that I got you onto the phones immediately within 30 seconds notice, because I was just watching you. I was like, she just needs to get on the phone. So how was that experience?
Yes, that was
the fear. Yeah. I know you were fearful, but how was that?
Yeah, so Jake's standing behind me going, just pick it up. So I picked it up, but unfortunately the headphones were plugged in, so the lady was speaking into the headphones and I was talking to the phone, and it wasn't working. And then I realised, so it wasn't a great start. But anyway, I said, oh, I'm really sorry, and it's not a great start. Anyway, it was fine. We got off. It was fine, but it was quite funny, and it was memorable. Yes, Jake standing there going, just pick it up. And being the boss, I didn't want to not do what I was told.
I think you've been throwing people into the deep end, because you got a good result out of that case from what I remember. And sometimes just don't want to make that step because they then go, but I just don't know. And
it's scary,
we always think that the client has these huge expectations of us that they don't.
Yeah.
They are calling you because they just want you to sort of take a little bit of lead on their problem. But so what is your most memorable moment then?
Well, I suppose like everybody, I've got quite a few, because you do remember, like Dan says, you know, and everybody says, you do remember people and you do care, you know, you do ultimately care about them. And I'm always, it's difficult to identify one memorable moment. It was lovely one day I got a hug off a client. They were so like appreciative. Whereas really, I had booked them an advisor appointment. They did need specialist employment help, you know, so I hadn't ultimately done that much, but I think it was the relief for them, obviously, of someone listening and then going to speak to someone who could help. So yeah, I mean, lots of memorable ones. And even during the coronavirus time, one of them made me smile. They rang up and they're, you know, one front door for every question that you can possibly think of. And this one made me smile was, are the bottle banks still open? Because I've got a lot of wine bottles I need to get rid of. Which made me smile. Well, I didn't really. I just said, well, I was at Tesco's yesterday. I saw them emptying them, so yes.
Oh. Well,
I can't say Asda, but definitely Tesco's. So
that's the benefit of local knowledge, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah.
Brilliant. And Sophie, your most memorable moment?
Oh my goodness, I've got lots of years to choose from. I don't know about. There's so many, but I suppose one of perhaps memorable, satisfying. I took the experience of taking a client right through a process. So filling in a form, client gets rejected, requesting a reconsideration, client gets rejected, going to appeal, helping the client, appeal successful, client gets the benefit. 3 years later, it's reviewed, benefits withdrawn, start again, go through the process again, client wins again. And that's, you know, it's very frustrating for the client, but really satisfying. And my goodness, you learn a lot. Yeah. And of course, colleagues, just being in a team that's supportive is always helpful. It's not a moment, but it's part of what makes it worthwhile.
And I think that's what's interesting, because you do, and I think Dan said obviously you can answer a call today at the moment, that there are so many cases that you do get involved with, and so many of those. And I think certainly of the last 11 weeks, you know, we've had far more thank you and appreciation comments back from clients than certainly, you know, over the last year or so. And I wouldn't say that that's then because we haven't done fantastic over the last year, because we clearly have, but it's just been so intense right now, and people are so dependent upon people who can help, that the appreciation is just far more available right now, which is great. Obviously, we've kept you for longer than we said we would, so I'm just going to quickly go through the last two questions, and please do chip into this one if you want to. But Christina's asked which roles are available right now. So it's the initial checker, as you say, and how is the training for that delivered? So yeah, the only role that we're really recruiting for right now on the entry level is the initial checker, which is people who are answering the phone, which is all of you right now. Obviously on the panel. So the initial checker is just triaging people right now. And the training for that is about a day. Caroline, you could probably explain better than me about what that training is.
It was basically online training to deal with the telephone system, and then writing up your case, your brief, your notes onto Casebook, which is our system that we use for writing up the case notes, obviously, and a bit of admin, basically. So one day, or possibly maybe two sessions, should probably do that. And the support is there. If you feel that you haven't covered it in that time, then you can do it again until you feel confident to be able to do it.
And you have everything like scripts and all the other information.
Yes, it's all. There's a big support pack there, and every document that you need, you can access on either on the intranet or from the support pack in your email. So everything is there to guide you through it. And if you are struggling, then you can log into the Hangouts and speak to a supervisor. There's always someone there. Well, I found whenever I've needed it. there's someone there to answer my query and guide me through it. And it wasn't as frightening as I thought it was, scary as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I would say, and it's very satisfying role, and
Brilliant.
nice to be able to do a little part to keep the service going. So
absolutely. And at the moment, I think it's weekly at the moment. We have the bite-size training as well. If any of you attended our bite-size training, can you give us an example of some of the stuff that we've done training on?
Well, we've done work on mental health, on the DEFRA scheme for getting slots for those who are not shielded but vulnerable. We've done something on looking on how to use our intranet effectively. So there's a whole universal credit, so it's varied. And it's good, it just keeps us topped up, and they're there to refer to if we need to.
And they're just half an hour, aren't they? Half an hour quick sort of.
Yeah, that's right.
Together. Okay, and then a question for you all before we wrap up from Anna, which is, what would you say to someone who'd like to volunteer but don't think they know enough? And I'll just throw that out there.
Well, shall I chip in that? Sorry, no, go on, someone. But basically, I think I was in that boat, really, because I really don't know anything about benefits. In fact, I thought that universal credit was it, virtually. So, when I came in, I really didn't know. So I think, as I say, as long as you're personable enough and you engage with the clients, I don't think you have to know the technical detail immediately you join. You pick that up gradually so that you know probably enough to deal with some of the common problems. But you are allowed, when you're talking to a client, to say, look, is it okay if you ring you back and come away, research it, talk to your supervisor, and then call them back? So, I don't think that should scare people from volunteering. Because you can't know it all. It's such a wide range of things to know.
Absolutely true, yeah. And things change anyway, so you don't want to rely on information from your previous experience. You want to check it hasn't changed. That can be dangerous to do that. So it's true.
And that came up with some of the the updates, because things were evolving very quickly with this crisis. Yeah. Some of the government rules were changing with regard to furlough coming
absolutely.
up. And, we were getting emails coming through the experts in Citizens Advice, giving us those updates and explaining them to us.
I'd just say, as an initial checker, you're not expected to know that level of detail either, because you just find out the situation as much as you can, and then go to your supervisor, who will advise you of the next steps, and then go back to the client and advise them about what will happen next. So there's nothing to worry about.
And you never know all there is to know. And if you think you do, then perhaps it's the day to leave.
It's a dangerous thing, yeah.
It is. You have to keep checking and keep on top of it, which is part of the joy of the job, really.
It's something that we benefit from being part of the National Citizens Advice Network, isn't it? That we have access to expert advice teams. We have our Citizens Advice public website, which has got lots of advice information on there that we use as our main source of information as well, which is great. Okay, before we wrap up, I just wanted to go one by one and take whatever turns you want to. What would be the thing you would say to people who are thinking about volunteering with us but just still aren't sure whether it is a step they want to take?
I would just say, give it a go. Just give it a go. And then staff are so caring and understanding. If you find it's not for you, then that's fine. Just give it a go, though.
I agree. We get lots of support. Lots of support, lots of understanding. I'm not very technical, so getting set up from home, but everybody was so patient and so supportive and just lovely. And you don't have to know lots. You just have to be willing and ready to learn and give it a go.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think you've got to give it a certain time as well. It can be quite difficult, can be quite a challenge to begin with. I'm not a very, as you probably gathered today, not very technically savvy. So sometimes, feeling your way around all the systems, if you're not very good at that, can be a bit wieldy. It's not for most people, but for some people like me, it might be. And also, if you're not feeling very confident, probably talk to people and say, what you're concerned about before sort of pulling away. But certainly give it a go and give it quite several months, I'd say, before if you were thinking it wasn't for you.
Yeah,
I think. Go on, Dan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would say the same thing. I know it's been said loads of times, but the supervisors really are a life. But especially when you're beginning, even now, because I'm only 2 months in, but when you're really at the beginning, and you have someone spoken to you and you have no clue about which form would I fill in, where would I place the form, what do I need to ask, the supervisors are enormously helpful. And also that it comes, and then not to panic if it doesn't feel natural the first few times. I remember the first few times I did it, I was just in my room and then looking at my phone and and the advice line screen waiting for the call to come in. And inevitably it comes in when you've looked away, and then that you just hear the phone buzzing. But that it takes a while for it to become instinctive and for it to become natural to know where to put your casebook report and where to put the different forms, and that to give it time, and that it will start to slowly fit into place and become more easy and more sort of natural.
Oh,
yeah.
I think you just spend a little bit of time finding out about what Citizens Advice is all about as well. There's lots of information on our website, and then come and talk to people like Nikki, and perhaps meet some of us and talk about what we do. And it isn't for everybody, but it will probably be for more people than think they could cope with it if they spend some time finding out. Yes. And it's hugely satisfying and rewarding.
Well, if you wouldn't stay for 8 years if it wasn't, I would certainly expect. So.
No, I'm banking on another 8, but see if I manage that.
Yeah. So I've put the website at the bottom. It's citizensadvicewokingham.org.uk/volunteering if you're interested in joining. And exactly as Sophie said, have a conversation with Nikki. Nikki hosts open sessions on Hangouts, and I'm sure we'll do that face-to-face when we're able to return to that as well. So Volunteers Week, once again, a huge thank you to our 87 volunteers, and thank you, Dan, Caroline, Bernadette, Roz, and Sophie for this very enjoyable session. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Don't say no until I've turned it off.
They have.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yes,
I want to finish there, but thank you all very much, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.